Drop on by the Clown Cafe. Drop on by the Clown Cafe.
The night that Terrifier 2 premiered, I did a recap of the franchise and a review of Terrifier 2, so here is that now. Hey, it's Hub. I'm recording this late at night because I just got back from a screening of Terrifier 2. If you've come across this video and you don't know Video the Damned, I do horror news and reviews and commentary. If you're somebody who watches my stuff but you don't know where Terrifier came from, I'll give you a quick history. Damon Leone is the writer and director. He got his start in special effects. He started out with a short film called The Ninth Circle, and that had Art the Clown. He took that material and put it in an anthology called All Hallows Eve. Art the Clown got very popular from there within the horror community, and so Terrifier was the first feature, and it was just a down-and-out, gritty slasher film, 82 minutes, and very praised for David Howard Thornton's portrayal of Art the Clown. A silent killer, but with a lot of expressive movements and dark comedy to him. And Damon Leone, of course, was praised for the special effects, the gore, the kills, which are just off the charts. So Terrifier 2 is this passion project that had a lot of support, literally, from the horror community in the form of a fundraiser. There was an Indiegogo, and it definitely knocked it out of the park as far as raising the funds for the budget. Actually, one of the donors was in attendance tonight in my row and got to be in the movie, got to be killed in the movie, and a lot of cheering in the theater for that. Both Leone and Thornton have a lot of love for Arizona because their first horror convention and their first Art the Clown photo op was here at Mad Monster Party. In fact, before the film, there was a video greeting specifically for us in Tempe from Thornton and Leone. Then the film ran, and I gotta tell you, it's 2 hours and 28 minutes. This is quite epic. I'm not going to give you spoilers. I'm just going to talk to you about thematically what I saw in this film, because I know already every review is going to tell you the kills are over the top, the gore, the effects are great. They're going to tell you how the protagonist, Lauren Lavera as Sienna, is amazing. How Elliot from Little Punk People as the little brother is great. This is all true. And plus, you'll hear about cameos from Felissa Rose, Chris Jericho. Yes, this is all very awesome stuff. You'll also hear about how there is more of a mythology built around Art the Clown now. And honestly, this dates back to that short film, The Ninth Circle. We know that Art the Clown was affiliated with some sort of satanic cult, and we saw that again with the inclusion of this footage in All Hallows Eve. It wasn't covered in the 82 minutes of Terrifier, and we don't really dive any further into it in Terrifier 2. In fact, if we never hear about any cults again in this franchise, I wouldn't be surprised. It's very possible that Leone has taken this off into a different direction, but we just don't know yet. But you will see that there is this greater story arc of good versus evil hinted at. And when we're introduced to our protagonist, there's a lot of backstory introduced and hinted at. Although this epic 2 hours and 28 minutes is a complete adventure for sure, and there is an ending of sorts, it's still left open enough for a sequel. It's still left open enough to explore that mythology. There's not a whole lot I can comment on about that without giving spoilers, and also because in that sense, the work is not complete yet. If we're looking at Terrifier and the story of Art the Clown and the story of Sienna as this epic, as this story of good versus evil, we'll have to wait and see. And let's wait and see until we comment more on that. I can tell you I like the direction it's going. And I can tell you that to get there, Leone really starts weaving in what he calls in interviews that I've heard fantasy. I would call it magical realism. I got a little Jodorowsky vibe, and I wouldn't be surprised if Leone is a Jodorowsky fan. I'm seeing it maybe biased as a Jodorowsky fan myself. He more specifically mentioned Fellini in this interview. There's actually a cool making of featurette that we got to see after the film was over. So I'm getting some material from that for you. But inspired from that, I did go back and read some old interviews with Leone and listen to some new ones. Not a surprise that he's influenced by Romero, Savini, Craven, Carpenter, Friday the 13th movies, Nightmare on Elm Street movies, the Halloween movies. Art the Clown is his attempt at creating a new icon. I would argue that he has successfully done that. This character has been around for nearly 20 years now across 3 feature film projects, All Hallows Eve and Terrifier 2, with a Terrifier 3 certainly to come. I think there's fans who have embraced this character in this series as a reaction to elevated horror. This is somewhat, back to basics as far as it's a killer, it's gory, we love it. It gets as nasty as a Cannibal Holocaust or a, pick your zombie movie, for sure. But there's another aspect to Art the Clown and to Terrifier 2 that I haven't heard anybody speak on yet. I'm not saying I'm going to be the only one who says this, but haven't heard anybody else talk about this yet. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, pun slightly intended. I think that Leone is really, in the same way that Zach Cregger did with Barbarian, I really think he is evolving the genre. He is giving us what we loved of the 80s, but he also is inspired by international works. He's inspired by 70s Grindhouse. And I think he's also really working hard to say something else about the nature of fear. I mean, the film is called Terrifier, and you finally get to see that word in Terrifier 2. It's not just the label that was slapped onto the first movie, like the word Terrifier is made concrete in this. But I want to mention some aspects of Terrifier 2 that aren't spoilers. If you've seen the movie, then maybe you recognize these things happening. If you haven't seen the movie, I think you should look out for them, and it might enhance your enjoyment. One thing I want to mention, this movie is very conscious of the fact that art is an icon, and it plays with it in a way I haven't seen since Natural Born Killers or Behind the Mask. There's, by the way, a Jeffrey Dahmer reference that's very funny and very timely with the current Netflix miniseries. There's a motif about food, and it's not explicitly commented on, but there is this reoccurring motif about food, about cereal, about dinner time and mashed potatoes, and wow, you'll see what I mean. There's a song, a reoccurring song called Clown Cafe, and the song itself talks about about food at the Clown Cafe. You also hear a news report about recall of romaine lettuce. Fundamentally, there is something very disturbing about your food being messed with. And again, even though this isn't explicitly talked about in the film, there's an undercurrent there. So here's a quick update a couple years after I recorded this. I got to ask Damien about the food motif, and he didn't really disclose much. He did say maybe it's just that he's Italian and he loves food. Also, obviously, the film being on Halloween, Leone has said that, hey, it's when a guy can get away walking around with a clown suit with blood on it. And you see Art get away with a lot under the guise of Halloween. in this film, Terrifier 2. But it's also about that veil that some speak about on Halloween and this time of season, between the dead and the living. And that's another reoccurring motif in Terrifier 2, not only because Art the Clown is back from the dead, which he was clearly dead at the end of Terrifier 1, but he's back for Terrifier 2, right? And you see more of that. You also begin to see other characters with a glimpse through this veil of life and death. Again, there's a lot more fantastical element, as Leone has said, magical realism in this installment. Some of the exposition, the backstory about Sienna and her family starts to deal with that. Leone specifically said in an interview that he wanted Terrifier 2 to be his Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is the sequel that really started to bring in a lot more of mythology around Freddy Krueger and around what happens in dreams and dream warriors. So I can see that direct influence there. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on in the future. I also definitely see this as his Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Even with, I think, if I will be so bold to say, this franchise's version of a Chop Top. Kind of a different twist on it, but I will just say that there's somebody new introduced to us that I think is just as lovable a mascot and creepy comical presence as Bill Moseley's character in Chainsaw 2. With that all in mind, again, I think of Zach Cregger and I think of Barbarian, and I think of this attempt by filmmakers who love horror and grew up with 80s horror and were influenced by 70s horror, trying to do their version of it, but still being able to say bigger things, make greater statements than just somebody killing somebody. I do think that there is a work here discussing the nature of fear itself, but the message isn't fully realized yet. I like where it's going, and I like where we're at so far, and I am taking this as a chapter in a book, a long chapter, a 2-hour and 28-minute chapter, and I'm really interested to see where it goes, especially where we're left with everybody at the end of the movie, and yep, there's a mid-credits scene, and it just hints at a lot more possibilities, and this world keeps opening up, and the rules just keep getting more flexible, broken. I mean, we don't really know the internal logic yet. It's not like there's any characters talking about the rules. And, you know, that's something you see in Italian horror, right? I've heard a lot of commentary talk about how Italian horror doesn't have to make sense. Fulci and Argento, it's just, you know, a showcase for the kills, but still saying something and showing fantastical things. So is Art the Clown art? Maybe. But there's still plenty for the horror fan who loves stomach-churning gore to sink their teeth into here. And quite literally, Art does sink his teeth into plenty of it. I hope I've made you interested in seeing the movie, and I hope I've given you a different perspective and different topics to talk about and think about in regards to this movie than some of the other reviews that you will be seeing. But I am interested to see more viewers of this film talk about what it meant to them and what resonated with them. And yeah, that's kind of a surprise to me. I did go in expecting a 2.5 hour gore fest, and I did get that. But I got a lot more. I got a lot more story, and I got a lot more symbolism to unpack. I'm telling you, there's something about that lettuce recall we're going to have to examine. Also, Leone kind of, I want to say pulled a Rob Zombie. I know Rob Zombie is a divisive figure, especially with the Monsters movie out. But I think of how Zombie, Rob, hints at the things that have influenced him. And, Leone quite directly puts clips of like Night of the Living Dead's playing on a TV, things like that. I like it when filmmakers do that. I think based on the interviews I've read and seen and heard and what I saw in this film, I think that Damon Leone, who much like Tom Savini, used special effects as his calling card to break into the, doing film. And in Savini's case, he really wanted to act. With Leone, he really wants to write and direct, but show off his practical effects, his gore. I really do think, though, he is somebody who loves film, not just horror, but film. And I really want to say he's a filmmaker's filmmaker. I think he's very conscious of the power of the medium, and he is, there was specifically an interview where he was talking about, hey, there's lines I don't cross, but that doesn't mean others shouldn't. I think any filmmaker should do what they want to do and show what they want to show. So I think that he approaches these things very thoughtfully. Now, I think there's going to be a barrier between Terrifier 2 and mainstream audiences that wasn't there for Barbarian. Obviously Barbarian has Disney money behind it, and it's become this #1 box office hit, and I'm very excited to see what Krager does with that. But this is an independent film, and it was shown at independent theaters, unrated, uncut. Whereas a Freddy Krueger or a Jason Voorhees or a Michael Myers or a Leatherface has been passed around as far as the rights from time to time. Damon Leone still has the rights to this character and to these movies, and so for the last nearly 20 years has been doing what he wants with them. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think I heard a review saying that Leone could use an editor. I disagree. I think that he does it on his own terms and is going to give you a 2.5-hour movie. That's beautiful. That's the auteur. That's the artist. The art of Art the Clown and Terrifier and the Terrifier franchise, the Terrifier series and Terrifier 2. It is interesting to note that there was talks at some point about the Ninth Circle being a feature. And now again, Ninth Circle was a short that inspired this All Hallows Eve anthology that then became, plucking Art the Clown and putting him in his own series. But clearly Leone has this greater mythology in mind. Whether he returns to the Ninth Circle specifically, the cult stuff, which again, didn't get into that like I predicted based on my knowledge of the character and what I saw in the trailer. If you go back to my trailer reactions, one thing I did get right was the Sienna being a counterpart to Art, and then both being in the black and white at some point. But you see Sienna evolve. That's clear from the trailer too, as far as what she's wearing, for instance. But again, this all remains to be seen. I will wrap this up by just saying and I won't be alone in saying this either, I'm sure, the experience of seeing this in a theater was hilarious. People were rooting for Art the Clown and cheering him on as he did kills. Didn't matter if we got invested in the character that was being killed. Based on the spectacle of it and based on the facial expressions of Art and reactions of, I'll just say, other characters who were present for some of those scenes, there's a lot of dark comedy to this. We are pushing envelopes. We are tiptoeing lines, if not stepping over them completely. I think this is a great accomplishment in horror and in cinema, and I'm really proud to have gotten to watch it opening night with my friends and fellow horror fans in the Arizona horror fan community. Really cool, again, seeing Leone and Thornton personally introduce the movie to us via video message. Great experience. And it makes me want to go back actually and watch all the old stuff again, All Hallows Eve and Terrifier. And I think I want to watch Terrifier 2 again sometime. Because there is a difference between seeing something on the big screen and then watching it again on the little screen. So it is, I think, one that I will go back to. Right now I'm just tired and happy and grossed out in the best way. There's some other stuff I've watched in the last week, and some stuff I even forgot to talk about just because I ran out of time on the last episode. But we'll get to those another time. I wanted to make this special for Terrifier 2 and for you. So we'll get to those next time. Until then, I remain hope.